Okay, so this morning we're going to look at the circuit problems that you were given by the substitute. The first one says that you are given this line of resistors. You have a 5 ohm, you have a 8 ohm, and a 12 ohm. And they're all in series, and they want to know the total resistance, so you're simply going to add up 5 ohms plus 8 ohms plus 12 ohms. Make sure you show your work, and you should get 25 ohms. All right, the second one, you have 3 resistors, the same 3 resistors, but this time they're in parallel. So here's your poorly drawn resistors, 5 ohms, 8 ohms, and 12 ohms. This time you have to say 1 over RT equals 1 over R1 plus 1 over R2 plus 1 over R3. So you have 1 over 5 plus 1 over 8 plus 1 over 12. Looks like to me you need to find a common denominator, and or use the x to the minus 1 key on your calculator, and I believe that I did x to the minus 1. 120 might be a good common denominator, but I believe I used the x to the minus 1, and when I did that I got 2.45 ohms, which is less than the smallest, which is totally correct. Alright, and then on the third one, it asks you to use this circuit, and there's my parallel branch, and there's my battery, and I know that that's 16 volt battery. This is 4 ohms, this is 12 ohms and 6 ohms, and it asks you to find I total and I1 through I3 and R total and V1 through V3. So deal with your parallel first. So 1 over 12 plus 1 over 6 is 1/12 plus 2/12, which is 3/12. So RT is 4 ohms because that's 12 over 3. And then that 4 ohms adds with this 4 ohms to give you RT for the circuit, which is 4 ohms plus 4 more ohms. And notice I'm showing all my work regardless of how simple it is because I want total credit for this. So IT is going to be VT over RT. So that's 16 volts over 8 ohms, which is 2 amps. Very helpful. Then I want to get I1. Well, I1 is going to come in as 2 amps. Not 2 ohms, sorry, 2 amps. I1 is going to be equal to 2 amps. And then I2, alright, so 2 amps has to go through 4 ohms, so that tells me there's 8 volts here and 8 volts here. So I2 is 8 volts over 12 ohms, or 2/3 of an amp. I3 is going to be the same 8 volts because it's in parallel over 6 ohms, which is 1 1/3 amps. And those add back up to my 2 amps, so I know that I'm correct there. Then they wanted V1. Well, V1 is I1 R1. I1 was 2 amps. R1 was 4 ohms. So I dropped 8 volts there. V2 we already calculated as 8 volts. And V3 we already calculated as 8 volts, but we'll show our work. That's 2/3 of an amp going through 12 ohms. And then that's 1 1/3 amps going through 6 ohms. Alright, so that takes care of all of those. The fourth one is very similar. Simply flip-flop the location of the parallel group and the series group. And this battery is 36 volts. So we have 9 ohms here, and 18 ohms here, and 6 ohms here. And they want the current in the 9 ohm resistor. So they're trying to make it a little bit easier, but I still have to do all the work. So I'm going to say 1 over 9 plus 1 over 18 is 3/18. So that whole group is 6 ohms. And I have another 6 ohms in series with it. Give me 12 ohms. and I is V over R. 36 volts over 12 ohms is 3 amps. So I have 3 amps out here. It has to go through a total of 6 ohms. So that's 18 volts dropped there. And 18 volts dropped here. 18 divided by 9 is 2 amps. 18 divided by 18 is 1 amp. 2 plus 1 gives me my 3 back, so I know that in the 9 ohm resistor, it had to be 2 amps. So that one wasn't too bad. Alright, the fifth one, you have a 15 ohm, a 10 ohm, and a 6 ohm. And they are in series, so this is R1, R2, R3. And then I have 124 volts. They want everything, so RT is just the sum of 15 plus 10 plus 6, which is 31 ohms. IT, which is I1, which is I2, which is I3, is 124 volts over 31 ohms, which is 4 amps. And then they want V1 is I1R1, so 4 amps times 15 ohms is 60 volts. V2 is 4 amps times 10 ohms, which is 40 volts. And V3 is 4 amps times 6 ohms, which is 24 volts. So that one's done. Alright, number 6 has 3 resistors in parallel. So, alright, so number 6, I have 3 resistors. Looks like the same 3 resistors, 15, 10, and 6, and they're in parallel. $15, 10, and 6, and they have 12 volts for their battery. So I got to get RT by doing 1 over 15 plus 1 over 10 plus 1 over 6. So it looks like 30 is a good lowest common denominator. And if I did that correctly, I'd have 2 over 30 plus 3 over 30 plus 5 over 30, which gives me 10 over 30. When I flip it over, I get RT to be 3. And yes, I showed my work, even though it was very easy. Okay, so IT is going to be 12 volts over 3 ohms, or 4 amps. V1 equals V2 equals V3 equals V total. And so that's going to be 12 volts for all of those. So I1 is going to be 12 volts over 15 ohms, and that's 0.8 amps. I2 is going to be 12 volts over 10 ohms, which is 1.2 amps. And I3 is going to be 12 volts over 6 ohms, which is 2 amps. And those all add back up to 4 amps, so I know I've done it correctly. All right, number 7. You have nothing very complicated. 2 in parallel, and then that parallel group is once again in series with the other, so that's 24 volts. And then you have 6 ohms, and then you have 15 ohms, and 10 ohms. And they want everything. So I'm going to say, well, I is equal, and I get an RT first, so I'm going to say 1 over 15 plus 1 over 10 is 2/30 plus 3/30, which is 5/30. When I flip that over, I get 6. So RT is 6. And 6 and 6 for the total resistance is 12. Very similar to the one on the front page if I remember correctly. So IT is going to be 24 volts over 12 ohms or 2 amps. All right. So now I have 2 amps coming in here. So I1 is 2 amps and V1 is 12 volts. I2 is going to be a little bit different. I need to get V2, which is equal to V3, which is equal to 6 ohms times 2 amps. When I get to a parallel, I always do the total current coming in times the total resistance of the group. So that's 12 volts. So that's going to be 12 volts over 15 ohms, which is, I think, 0.8. And then I3 is going to be 12 volts over 10 ohms, which is 1.2 amps. All right. 8. Okay, I'm going to pause for a minute. Okay, for part A, if I want maximum current to flow, then I need minimum resistance. So then I need to be putting them in parallel. So 1 over, 1 over, 1 over, and 1 over. So this is my 15. There's a 20, a 20, and a 30. So there's my wire. So I'm going to do 1 over RT equals 1 over plus 1 over plus 1 over plus 1 over. And when I did that, I got RT to be 5. And then for part B, I want minimum current. So if I want minimum current, I need maximum resistance. And so I'm just going to add those up by putting them in series. So I have 15, 20, 20, and 30. 85 ohms is the total resistance. All right, so let's talk about your test briefly. You're going to have 27 multiple choice. You're going to have 4 resistor circuits, 1 series, 1 parallel, and 2 combination. Now in the 2 combination, you're going to pick one to do and leave the other one alone. Then there will be 2 capacitors, 1 series, 1 parallel. And you're going to get 2 exam grades. I'm going to tie this in as 1 exam grade. And then this will be the second exam grade. I'll see you Monday morning if you need help. Goodbye.